Hello, welcome everybody to this episode 14 of the live streaming, Friday live streaming music series called Music Theory for Guitarists. So I'm just gonna pull up my live stream on a different device, as always, to make sure that everything is all right in terms of audio and sync with the video. It looks like, so we can definitely lower the volume here and get started with tonight's live streaming. Okay, so I'm going over the topics first, just to make sure that we are aware of what we're going to learn tonight, what we're gonna talk about, and while you guys join, obviously feel free to say hi, and if you want to ask any questions while I'm live. Okay, so what I wanted to double check, yes, the audio seems all right. Yes, let's try to live it like this. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to talk about tonight in this Music Theory for Guitarists episode 14 is going to be music modes, and what are the modes in general in music, and what kind of skills we can get talking about modes. We're going to talk about this thing called modal skills. I'm sure that most of you already heard this word, this term, modes, modal music, modal skills, and we're gonna learn them all tonight, or at least trying to understand how they work and what they are. Okay, so hopefully this will help you understanding better when somebody talks about modes and modal skills. So the first thing that I want to say is what they are. Okay, so basically when we talk about modes, we're going to talk about a series of intervals. So we're going to talk about scales in the end. But I believe that the best way to describe really the modes and what they are is actually going to be trying to understand the feeling that you get from the modes. So basically, whether I play something which goes like, or something that goes like, okay, I get a different series of intervals and therefore a different feeling. So the best description of what the modes are, in my opinion, is just going to be colors. Okay, so the way I like to think about modes is literally talking about colors when you improvise, when you play melodies. But let's clarify from the very beginning that the best way to think about modes is colors, because we think about scales over chords. So it doesn't make any sense if you say, what is the feeling of this scale? And what is the feeling of this scale? Because we don't have a harmonic reference underneath, and everything changes. The same phrase, the same scale that I play changes completely depending on the chord that you have underneath. Okay, so this is what we're going to try to understand tonight. We're going to try to understand how the modes really work, where they come from, how many modes we have, all this sort of stuff. But for now, let's just describe the modes as the modal skills, and the modes as colors that we can use to basically deliver different feelings when we use different notes, or at least the same notes in a different order. Okay, so let's go directly to the major scale and then also to the natural minor scale, because they will be the first two modes that we'll be talking about. Okay, so the scales that we already talked about as major scale and natural minor scales in this series will actually be the first two modes that we'll be introducing tonight. Okay, so when I talk about major scale, I obviously mean just this C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C that we played and discussed many times in the previous episodes. It's a series of intervals. This scale is made by 7 notes, and it's made by whole step, half step, then whole step, half step. Every time we have this series of interval, no matter what's the note you start from, you're gonna say that's a major scale. Okay, that's the first mode. The major scale itself, it's the first mode. And in terms of intervals, what we care about really, it's just this series of intervals: whole step, half step, and then 3 times whole step, and then half step. That's what we really care about, okay, to describe the first mode. How do we get all of the other modes? Just a little anticipation about this. We are gonna basically play the same 7 notes I just played, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, but every time we'll be starting from a different note. So if I play the same notes but starting from D and ending on the note D, I will get the second mode of the major scale. If I will be starting from E and ending on E, I will be getting the third mode of the major scale, from F to F, the fourth, and so on, okay? So we basically get all of the modal scales just playing C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, so the 7 notes of the major scale, but every time starting from a different note, a different degree of the major scale. In that sense, when we start from the first degree, we call that the major scale, but it's already one mode, okay? This mode is also called Ionian, okay? So when we say Ionian or major scale, that's exactly the same. The names of the modes, guys, literally kind of like come from Greek because they were using ancient music, so that's the reason why we call them this way, okay? So that's just a little introduction to the major scale as the first mode, because we are going to learn all of the modes tonight. Guys, again, once more, while you join, feel free to say hi and ask any questions. We'll be mainly talking about modal scales tonight, modes and modal scales tonight. If you feel like supporting this channel, you can also use the super chat or the super stickers, which are now available in the chat box on the right, I believe. Okay. Now, let's also talk about the relative minor key. Relative minor scale, which is going to be that scale that we said it's built on the 6th degree. So again, taking as a reference the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, the 7 notes of the C major scale, the 6th degree is nothing but A. So we said, when I play the same note starting from A, I'm playing what we called the relative minor scale. So if we're talking about C major, the relative minor will be A minor. So A minor is the relative minor scale, okay? The relative minor scale is a very important one. It takes a specific name, which is natural minor scale, but it also has a second name, which is the name of the mode, and that name is Aeolian, okay? So if we say the Aeolian scale or natural minor scale, that's exactly the same. It's the scale built on the 6th degree of the major scale here on the note A. We already talked about this scale, and when we introduced it and when we saw, a few fingerings for it, we also said basically the series of intervals that we find changes compared to the major scale, although we find the same notes and the same intervals. They're just gonna be in a different order, and this changes the way we play the scale, okay? In terms of fingering, but also in terms of sound, very much, okay? And we also described how you harmonize these scales separately, so you get the harmonization of the major scale, the harmonization of the minor scale, the relative minor scale, and in this way, you get the 7 chords that you need to know in order to understand what's the key of any chord progression you play, what's the key of any song that you're playing, and if you guys want to go a little bit deeper in that, make sure to check out the episodes 10 and 11 of this series that you're watching now, okay? Because that is where you find everything about music keys. So yeah, when we describe the natural minor scale as the relative minor of C, we said that these two scales are relative and not parallel, for example, which is another concept that we introduced and another approach that I would like to give you towards the end of this live streaming to learn and understand the modes on guitar. We described the natural minor scale as the relative minor because it was made by the same notes as the major scale, just starting from the 6th degree. And we said the concept of relative major, relative minor, and in general, relative keys, when we talk about major keys and minor keys, is that they contain the same notes. We describe the relative minor as that key which contains exactly the same notes as the major scale, just in a slightly different order. Okay, that's what we care about basically when we try to understand these scales. Okay. Hey, Moin, thanks so much. Thanks so much for your donation. Really appreciate it. And feel free to ask any question. So yeah, that's what we said about the natural minor scale, and that's what we said in general about the relative minor and the relative minor keys. Okay. Now, all of the other modes that we're going to learn tonight, we're going to talk about Dorian, we're going to talk about Phrygian, we're going to talk about Lydian, we're going to talk about Mixolydian, we're going to obviously again talk about the relative minor, the Aeolian mode, and we're also going to talk about the Locrian mode, the seventh mode. Okay, all of them have different sounds, right? You can hear that they have a different sound, and we'll go deeper into the intervals of all of them, basically, tonight. So yeah, something that I definitely want to discuss with you and I want to introduce is basically just a quick recap of the intervals that you find in the natural minor scale in the Aeolian mode as opposed to the major, so that then we can approach all of the 7 modes with names, formulas, and degrees. Okay, so when we talk about major or Ionian, we already said again that's just whole step, half, whole step, half. When we talk about Aeolian or natural minor scale, we talk about whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. And in terms of degrees, when we talk about the major scale, guys, is made by root, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and then root note again. So all of the degrees are either major or perfect. When we talk about minor, we basically have different degrees. We have the root note, major second, minor third, because it's obviously a minor scale, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, and then root note again. Okay, so what we want to remember about the degrees of the natural minor scale or Aeolian mode is that we're going to find the minor third, the minor sixth, and the minor seventh. Okay, and now we're ready to move on to all of the next chapters, and in particular, we're going to now talk about all of the 7 modes. In the meantime, I want to take a minute to read a couple of comments by Moyen, who says, finished 6 of the first episodes of this series. Oh, great. That's fantastic. Great news. Even though I had some background about music theory, some applications blew my mind. Just finished Office and now excited for this. Love your rest. Oh, thanks so much. Really appreciate your comment, and I'm glad that they really helped. Keep going with all of the other episodes. Take some notes. Feel free to, watch the parts that you're more interested using the timestamps that I put after each video of this live series, and you'll be able to, recap the parts that you're more interested in, just going directly to that specific chapter. So again, thanks a lot for your donation and for your nice comment. And Vishal also says, perfect beard, which is quite the point of this channel. So yeah, thank you very much. Nice. Okay, let's move on now. Next topic is going to be now the modes of the major scale, names and formulas. So we are going to learn that when I play the C major scale, obviously I'm showing all of the examples in C major, but they could have been in literally in any other key. If I start from the note C, which is my root note, okay, I'm going to play the major scale, obviously. So the name of this first mode is either major scale or Ionian, okay? And we already said that the intervals are just whole step, half, whole, half. Then I will move on to the second mode. The second mode, guys, is called Dorian. It applies to the minor 7th degree that you get on the second degree, obviously, of the harmonization of the major scale. Okay, you start from the note D, and the notes that you play are the same as the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, but starting from the note D. Okay, so instead of playing C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, the major scale, you play the same note starting from the note D. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And obviously, you can already tell that they actually have a different sound because the series of intervals that you get is different, exactly like It was different when we were talking about relative minor and general Aeolian mode, okay? And remember that all of these modes, in a way, they're all relative to each other because they basically contain exactly the same notes. Okay, so let's try to talk about the intervals in this Dorian scale. If you want to see a different fingering for it, you can even finger it this way: D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Keeping in mind this is the root, you can reconnect this to, for example, this -7 chord. So anytime you want to move this -7 chord anywhere else, you want to, for example, play F -7, you take this as a reference and you play your Dorian scale like. Okay. Need a lesson on soloing? This is quite the point of this live streaming. Make sure to watch it all, because everything we're saying tonight is all about the way you improvise over chords using the modes and the modal scales. So yeah, now let's keep going with the third mode that we are going to play, which starts in the key of C. It starts from the note E, because E is the third degree. So we're just going to play again the 7 notes of the C major scale, starting from the note E, and we'll be getting E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. Okay? Again, if you want a different fingering, go to this E here and play the same notes, just starting from the note E on the 7th fret of the A string, and you'll get E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. Okay, I kind of like went intentionally on that degree that we'll be talking about now, which explains the difference in the sound between, for example, Dorian and Phrygian. Now, Phrygian is the name of the third mode, the mode that we just played, starting from E, the third note of the major scale. So when you play Phrygian, the Phrygian sounds a little bit more, I guess, Spanish, flamenco, Arabic, and, you know, all that sort of culture and sound. Okay, just to have an idea of the sound, although we said that we get the sound of the modes when we play them over chords, so that's what I was doing here. Okay, now over the E-7 third degree, okay, of the harmonization of the major scale, you play the Phrygian mode and you follow. You basically follow this series of intervals, which is half step, and that's the news. The first interval is half step, then whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Okay, so the intervals again are way different from the ones that we learned before. It sounds a bit Arabic, just like harmonic minor. That's a very good point. I would say that the Phrygian is the closest mode of the major scale to the harmonic minor scale. And if you guys are wondering what the harmonic minor scale is, make sure to watch the episode 13, so the one that I did last week, because there is where I talked about harmonic minor scale and melodic minor scale, so that we clarify them before we approach the modal scales coming from the major scale. Now, if I continue with the fourth degree, which is the note F, the scale that I'm going to play is F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Again, the same notes starting from the note F. The intervals that I get are whole step, whole step, whole step. So 3 whole steps, this will be the key of this, the core, let's say, of this scale. So whole step, whole step, whole step, half, whole step, half. This scale is called Lagian. And the Lagian scale, the modal scale built on the 4th degree of the major scale, has these intervals whole step, whole step, whole step, half, whole, half. And it's something that if you want to finger it from this F on the A string, you can play as F, G, A, B, C, D, E. I tried to stop on the notes which are more important in this mode, which we're going to explain in a minute. let's first finish the 7 modes. So the 5th mode starts from the note G, which is the 5th degree in the key of C, and it goes like G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, or if you want to fingering from the top, from the G that you find here on top, it's going to be G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, the intervals that you get, guys, are whole step, half, whole step, half, whole step. Okay, that half that I mentioned is basically the core of this mode, which plays over the G7, okay, which is obviously the 5th degree that you get. That you get harmonizing the major scale, guys. Okay, so G7, 5th chord. Okay, and the mode that you get is this kind of mode. Or if you want to think about some more bluesy phrasing that you can play over, G7, that's the actual point of it, okay? Okay, using the Mixolydian mode. So Mixolydian is the name of the 5th mode, 5th modal scale, starting from G, 5th degree of C major, okay? If I start from the 6th degree, you all guys know what I'm gonna get. Starting from the 6th degree A, I'm gonna get the natural minor scale, or A, Aeolian relative minor key of C major. Okay, we talked about it a lot, so if you guys watched the previous episodes of this live streaming, you should be fully aware of what the Aeolian mode is. So this goes like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. We already said the intervals are whole step, half, because obviously we've got the minor third, whole step, half, whole step, whole step, okay? And this plays over A minor or A minor 7, okay, which is the chord that you find on the 6th degree of the harmonized major scale. If you guys are unsure about the positions that I'm playing, for example, for A minor 7, G7, remember that watching the episodes 8 and 9 of this series, you'll be ready to play all of these chords that I'm playing, 7th chords, minor 7 flat 5, dominant 7, minor 7, etc. And you'll be able to basically learn the most important positions that I call the survival kit. Okay, because if you know them, you can survive when you have to play a song which has 7th chords. Hello Sunday, will this live be saved as video? Yes, guys. So all of the live streamings of this channel and of this music series called Music Theory for Guitarists are saved after the live streaming itself. Okay, so you'll find the recording of this live streaming after the live streaming, ready immediately after it, and after a few minutes also the timestamps will be available, which means, guys, that all of the things that I'm talking about in these streamings, which I appreciate are quite long, will be divided in chapters, and if you guys want to rewatch only parts of them, they will be in the timestamps, basically. Okay, really love your R&B chords progression videos. Thank you for helping us. Oh, thanks for watching them. I really enjoyed making the R&B and neo soul acoustic guitar series, and I can tell you that that's the news that a few more episodes are coming soon. So the episode 8 will be ready very soon. Moin also says, which is the most commonly used mode? Mixolydian. Well, it really depends. We can say that they are all very commonly used, but obviously Mixolydian has a very important use in blues contexts. So if you are playing a blues in G, where the first chord is G7, the mode that you should play over the 7th chord is G Mixolydian. Okay, which sounds bluesy as soon as I played it. Okay. Yeah, and then the 7th mode, the last mode that we got, guys, starting from the note B, is going to be the Locrian mode, which plays over this minor 7 flat 5 chord, okay, which is the chord that you find on the 7th degree of the harmonized major scale. So if I start from the note B, the notes that I play obviously would be the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, but starting from B, so that would be B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, okay. The series of intervals is quite unusual, so let's go over them. half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step. So this is the reason why we'll find very interesting degrees in a minute, where we're going to talk about the degrees. Okay, so these are the 7 modes that we find. Let's recap just the names quickly. Over the major 7 first degree, we play the Ionian or major scale. Over the -7 on the second degree, we play the Dorian, beautiful mode. Over the -7 third degree, we play Phrygian. Over the major 7 fourth degree, we play Lydian. Over the 7 dominant 5th degree, we play Mixolydian. Over the -7 6th degree, we play natural minor or Aeolian. And over the 7th degree or -7 flat 5, we're gonna play Locrian. Okay, these are the names of the 7 modes of the major scale. Now, the next part of this live streaming says modes of the major scale degrees. Okay, so we mention the names, we mention on which chord they actually get played, because it's important to realize that the modes need to be connected to harmony, to chords. Otherwise, they don't make any sense. They don't have any difference between each other. More about this later. And we also said what intervals you find, what's the series of intervals, distances between the chords that you find. Now, the next thing that we need to learn is what degrees we find when we play the single scales. Because we mentioned a major scale is made by whole step, half, whole step, whole step, whole step, half. And this means root, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, root note again. So this is no surprise, because obviously the major scale, it's called major scale because all of the intervals that you find, all of the degrees that you find in the scales are either major or perfect. Otherwise, it couldn't be a major scale. But all of the other scales that we're going to talk about now, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, they don't have all of the intervals major or perfect. Some of them will be, but many more will be minor, for example, diminished sometimes, augmented as well. So it would be interesting to talk about that. Now, before we approach this, I want to give you a way of reading all this information, because I appreciate that this is a lot of stuff and it takes time. You will probably have to rewatch this video, take some notes, compare it with other resources that you can find online. But the point is, if you guys follow the video on the harmonization of the major scale and how we get those chords down, the modal scales will be easier to learn, easier to follow. Because what is a modal scale? A modal scale is made by 7 notes, of course. And basically, when you play these 7 notes, 3 or even 4 notes out of 7 come from the chord underneath. Okay, 3 or 4, I mentioned 3 or 4, depending on whether you think about a triad or a 7th chord. So if I know, for example, that the major 7 is the chord that I play on the 1st degree, and therefore it would be the chord underneath the major scale or Ionian mode, I already know that the 1st degree is obviously the root, the 3rd note will be the major 3rd, the 5th will be the perfect 5th, and the 7th will be the major 7th. This is no surprise, it just comes from the chord, really, okay? So what we should say instead is how is the 2nd, the 4th, and the 6th degree of the scale, okay? And in the case of the major scale or Ionian mode, the 2nd is major, the 4th is perfect, and the 6th is major. So this already tells you also that if you want to extend the harmonization of the scale, the C major 7, for example, to the 9th, 11th, and 13th degrees, you already know how they will be. Well, because the 2nd degree of the scale is major, then the 9th degree in the chord above the 7th will be major as well, like that. The 11th, which is the 4th, 1 octave higher, will be perfect, but we don't play it here. It sounds not so good. And the 13th will be major as well, because that's how the 6th degree goes within the scale. Okay, so it goes major, and it gets, for example, a C major 13. Okay, so if you want to understand chord extensions, so the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th, I also have a video about that in the channel. I'll probably put a link or a card or something. you need to know the harmonization of the major scale. Because if you know that, in conjunction with what we're learning today about the modal scales, you get all of the degrees of the chords, all of the degrees of the scales, just because you know that. So let's apply this to the second degree. -7 is the chord that you find on the second degree. The Dorian scale goes like this. Okay, and it's made by root, major second, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, minor seventh, root again. So what do we have to remember about it? Because it comes from a -7th chord, we're going to have root, minor third, perfect fourth, minor seventh. Let's learn how the second, the fourth, and the sixth go. The second is major, the fourth is perfect, and the sixth is major as well. Okay, that you play over this lovely chord, Dorian chord. Okay, so the Dorian mode is different, for example, from the Aeolian or natural minor, because that scale had minor third, minor sixth, and minor seventh, while this, the Dorian, only has minor third and minor seventh, but the sixth is major. Okay, that's how you start understanding the differences between these scales, and it sounds a little bit sweeter if you want, or brighter if you want. That's the sound of the Dorian. If I was playing Aeolian instead, it would have sounded different, okay? I'll do it in D just to make sure that we are on the same page. This is how, over the same chord, if you play D Dorian, while if I play Aeolian, will sound different, right? Okay, but we'll see that in a minute when I will suggest a way to practice this and learn this on guitar, which is my parallel approach to the modes. Let's keep going with the Phrygian, okay? So for the Phrygian, the intervals that you get are root note, minor second, because it starts with a half step, that kind of thing, which sounds more Arabic and flamenco, we said as well. So root, minor second for the first time, okay, then minor third, but we were expecting this, perfect fourth, okay, yes, perfect fourth, of course, also perfect fifth, and then minor sixth, minor seventh, back to the root, okay, like this. Let's say this again. The Phrygian is made by root, minor second, minor third, but also perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, and that's it. Okay. Now we were already expecting root, minor third, perfect fifth, and minor seventh, because it comes from a -7 chord. The second, fourth, and sixth are very interesting because we're going to have a minor second or flat 9 for the first time. We're going to also have perfect fourth or perfect 11th, and we're also going to get a -6 or flat 13, okay, which is the same. Okay, let's move on now to the Lydian mode, which we play over the F major 7. The Lydian mode is made by root, major second, major third, sharp 4. That's the first time that we find the sharp 4. This is definitely the interval, the note, the degree that defines the color of the Lydian scale, sharp 4 or sharp 11. So root, major second, major third, sharp 4, or augmented fourth, raised fourth, which is the same, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, root. Okay. Okay, very difficult to give you guys the color and sound of the scales without having like a loop station or backing track. But this is something that we might do in one of the next live streamings. Okay, we might use a loop station to actually hear the sound of the chords underneath and play the modal scales on top to get the difference in terms of color. Now, what we want to compare is the sound of the F Lydian scale to C major scale. In terms of degrees, basically the only difference, guys, is one note. It's the perfect fourth of the major scale that now we raise to sharp 4 or sharp 11 when we talk about Lydian, okay? And we get chords like this, okay, which are Lydian chords, okay? And yeah, the beautiful thing about them is that they just have one note of difference. So if you want to overlap Lydian over a major 7 chord, it will give you a sort of dreamy sound, in my opinion. Okay. Then if I continue, I get the Mixolydian over the 7th chord, which is made by root, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, minor 7th, root. So the difference between a major scale and a Mixolydian is just that we are going to have the minor 7th, but this is no surprise again, because the dominant 7 chord is made by root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, and minor 7th. That's where it comes from. We're just learning that 2nd, 4th, and 6th degree are all major or perfect. Major 2nd, okay, perfect 4th, major 6th. All referring to the new root, the root of the mode, which is going to be G in this case. Okay, and yeah, let's also keep in mind that all of these names of the modal scales, when I say Dorian, Lydian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, and so on, they take the name from the note you start from. So we are taking as an example the key of C when we harmonize it. And as well as we got 7 chords, we now get 7 modes. But when we say Dorian, we're not talking about C Dorian, we're talking about D Dorian, because you start the Dorian scale from the 2nd degree of the C major scale. So C major has as a 2nd note D. You start from there when you want to play the Dorian scale, and that is going to be called D Dorian and not C Dorian. Okay. Now let's keep going with A minor 7, 6th degree. A is the note where you start from the Aeolian or natural minor scale, relative minor of C major. This is made, as we know, with is made by root, major 2nd, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, and perfect 5th, minor 6th, minor 7th. So we already learned that we had minor 3rd, minor 6th, and minor 7th in the previous episode. So let's move on directly to the Locrian mode that we play over this beautiful B half diminished, or minor 7 flat 5. We're going to have these intervals, very interesting. B, root note, C minor 2nd, so this is the 2nd mode, guys, after the Phrygian mode, which basically has the minor 2nd degree, half step interval. So root, minor 2nd, minor 3rd, okay, perfect 4th, diminished 5th, very important, diminished 5th, minor 6th, minor 7th, back to the root. So all of the intervals of the Locrian mode are with a flat, which means minor or diminished, with the exception of the 4th degree, which is perfect. So again, root, minor 2nd, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, but then diminished 5th, flat 5, minor 6th, minor 7th, back to the root. This is because, I can already expect this as well, because the chord that we play, minor 7, flat 5, is made by root, minor 3rd, diminished 5th, and minor 7th. Now, that means these 4 degrees will be in the scale, root obviously, then minor 3rd, diminished 5th, flat 5, and minor 7th. What we are interested in learning is the 2nd, 4th, and 6th. The 2nd degree is minor, we said. The 4th is perfect, it's the only one which stays perfect. And the 6th degree is minor as well. Okay, so that's what we need to remember about the modes. You want to know, guys, the names, the intervals that you get, and more importantly, the degrees, because that's what you're going to use when you improvise, and to compare them between each other as relative scales, relative modes. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. If you guys feel like you need to go back, feel free to go back after this live streaming. Once you get the timestamps, and you will see a review of all of the modes with the series of intervals and degrees and everything. You can take some notes and see also where I'm playing them on the fretboard of the guitar, because we call this live streaming series Music Theory for Guitarists. We know that we can find all of these information on the internet. Sometimes it's a little confusing, but you can find it elsewhere. The point is applying this to the fretboard of the guitar to make sure that everything we say is something that you can see on the fretboard of the guitar. Okay, now ready to go to the next point of tonight's live streaming, which is relative versus parallel, a guitarist approach to modes. Okay, this is because I want to give you guys all of the tools you might need, even in the future, even after this live streaming series will be done, in order to practice these modes and to learn them in a way that you don't get confused. Because I find, in my experience as a teacher, that most people that went through modes at some point in their guitar journey, they get confused very often. Even when they learn them, they get confused on how they actually work or how they can be used. Okay, so something that I want to clarify is that it makes no sense to say that when you learn the major scale, for example, or each shape that you learn is a different mode. This is absolutely fake news. Okay, let's try to understand it. More likely, if you guys learned the shapes of the major scale on guitar, you might have found, for example, 5 shapes like this. These were 5 shapes of the G major scale on guitar. Now, if you learn them this way, which is the way I recommend them to be learned, you first of all immediately think that we're going to find 5 shapes and we've got 7 modes. So there is already something that doesn't really work if you think that each of the scales that I played is one mode. Okay, I get the comment sometimes that, yeah, but I can play 7 shapes of the major scale, one starting from each degree of the scale. Fine, you can do that. This would be the shape 1. This would be the shape 2. Okay, this would be the shape 3. This would be the shape 4, I guess. This would be the shape 5, and so on. You know, guys, you can play 7 modes. It's actually easier on the electric guitar, but you can play 7 modes starting from each note of the scale. The point is, even if you do so, it's not correct say that each of the shapes is one mode, because when you really improvise, you guys don't really learn. You don't really use the scales from the first note to the last. It would be like saying, well, every time I play the major scale, I only play it like this. How many times have you heard this melody or this in a solo? 0, I guess. Okay, the scale is this, but then you use it to phrase it like. So this is a sort of improvisation where I used only notes of the C major scale. But obviously, until you get a chord underneath, you can't really tell what mode I used. And this is the actual core of understanding the modes. The modes are, as we said, just colors that you can use when you improvise. And if I tell you I used the notes of the C major scale, I could have used any mode. I could have thought of any mode, depending on what chord I've got underneath. And this is because all of the modes are relative to each other. So they all contain the same notes if we are in the key of C major, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, or B Locrian. They would contain exactly the same notes. So it doesn't make much sense thinking that when you do this, this is the major scale, the Aeolian, which by the way ends on the perfect fourth, so it makes really no sense. This is the Dorian. What's the point? Just because it starts from the second degree and it ends here, like, again, there's no point in doing this kind of visualization. What I want to deliver now as a message is that all of the shapes that you can play, the 5 shapes that I played, for example, or the 7 shapes of the extended shapes, 3 notes per string, they could be, all of them, they could be any mode. So you can find within each shape of the major scale on guitar all of the 7 modes. It depends on the way you play it, and it depends on the harmony underneath, on the chords underneath. Okay, I do agree though that if I only play the 7 notes of the mode, depending on the order that you follow, you create a different series of intervals, and you can hear the series of intervals of the Ionian or major scale if you do this. This, for example, G major or G Aeolian. You can hear the series of intervals and degrees in the A Dorian if you do this. Okay. B Phrygian if you do this. And so on and so forth. But this is what we basically use to create the modes. My critique to this is that you don't use this in this way when you improvise. Okay, you always need chords underneath. Okay, this is an introduction which leads me to explain what I mean with a guitarist approach to modes as relative versus parallel. So all of the modes we already explained, they are relative. So when we name them, starting from the harmonization of the key of C major, we should name them as C Ionian or C major, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, and B Locrian. This is because we said the mode takes the name from the note that I start from. Learning this is absolutely useless because in the end, what you are going to play, even in terms of shapes on guitar, is always the same shape. So again, I can use this shape that most of you might already know, which is one of the shapes of the major scale. You might think that this is a Mixolydian because it starts from the note G and contains all of the notes of the C major. And I can agree with that if you play it this way. But if you play it as I did, and maybe you continue, you are ending on A, ending on B. So it is the G Mixolydian as much as it is the A Aeolian or the E Phrygian. It really depends on the chord underneath. If you play an E minor underneath and then you play the same notes that I played, that will sound Phrygian because the harmony defines how this mode is going to sound. So my approach instead, this is what I recommend to anybody who wants to really dive into learning modes on guitar, is to practice them as parallel modes. So what I mean by that is that we are not going to practice C major and then D Dorian, E Phrygian, and so on. We're going to stay here and use the same root note for all of the modes, and in this way all of the modes become parallel, so meaning that they share the same root. So C will be the first one, C major. Then I stay on C, and I now play C Dorian. C Dorian, not D Dorian, which goes like this. Okay. I think I played a major 7 before, sorry. Okay. Okay. The notes are C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C. In this way, I can appreciate the difference with other modes. And more importantly, guys, they don't contain the same notes. If I practice C major and then I play C Dorian, you can already tell by ear and by practicing it that they contain different notes. While instead, if I didn't do this, if I didn't approach this as a parallel approach, but I stayed into my relative approach, I would have gotten something like basically I'm changing the intervals, but I'm using the same notes because I'm going from C major to D Dorian, to E Phrygian, to F Phrygian. That's the easy way, guys, of learning the modes, because you are only playing the same 7 notes, starting every time from a different note. And what you learn is absolutely nothing this way. You only learn the theory behind it, but you will never be able to apply this when you improvise. In order to be able to improvise, keep the same root, guys, C, and play C major or Ionian, C Dorian, play C Phrygian, guys, because in this way you visualize the intervals, root, minor second, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, root again. Okay, yeah, that's the sound of the Phrygian. Legion. Okay, I played root, major second, major third, raised fourth, augmented fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, root. Obviously, guys, you first need to go back with this video and learn all of the degrees of all of the modes to really be able to play this. Okay, there isn't a shortcut. You could think that if I'm playing C Legion, C represents the 4th degree of something else. That something else is G major. So effectively, I'm playing the G major scale starting from the note C. That is true, and you can look at it this way, but you should always refer to the actual root as the first note of the mode. Here is how you get the actual sound of the mode. Then you continue, mixolydian. Intervals, root, major second, major third, perfect fourth and fifth, major sixth, minor seventh, root. C7. And you start phrasing in a mixolydian way in the key of C mixolydian. Does this contain the same notes as F major? Yes, because C7 is the 5th degree of F major. C mixolydian contains the same notes as F major, but we don't care. We are learning C mixolydian. We are looking at it as C mixolydian with the intervals and the degrees counted as with C as a root note, and therefore we can overlap this scale to the correct chord, which is C7. This is, guys, is my advice after years and years of practicing and teaching this, and after discussing this with musicians from all over the world and with all different possible backgrounds. I found that this is the actual deal to learn the modes on guitar. You first need the theory, you first need the first part of this video, but if you then want to apply this on guitar, that's the method that I recommend to you to follow. If I continue, obviously, relative minor is something that we already played together, so I can play C Aeolian from here doing this. But you should already be on top of this. Root, major second, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, root. Make sure, guys, that while you practice this, you can also see what notes you're playing. C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, because this relates to knowing the names of the notes on guitar, and also see what degree they represent. Okay, that's the key of it. And then the last one, if I want to play over C minor 7 flat 5, C half diminished, I'm going to play C Locrian. Now, C Locrian is this. Root, minor second, minor third, perfect fourth, diminished fifth, minor sixth, minor seventh, root. of looking at C. Locrian, so that was C, Locrian. So what did I explain in the first part of this video, guys? I explained the modes with degrees, formulas, intervals, and everything, and I looked at them with an example coming from the harmonized C major scale, so C Ionian or major, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, B Locrian. Now, the way I suggested as an approach is the parallel approach, meaning C Ionian, C Dorian, C Phrygian, C Lydian, C Mixolydian, C Aeolian, and C Locrian. So that means they all share the note C, which is the root note for all of them. Okay, hope this helps. Now, the last thing that I want to briefly talk about is modes of the natural minor scale, because we harmonized in the previous episodes of this series, we harmonized the major scale as well as we harmonized the natural minor scale as relative minor of it. The chords that we get, obviously, are the same, just in a different order. And what I want to say is that even the modes are the same, just in a different order. So the good news is, if you guys know the modes coming from the C major scale, you also know the modes coming from A natural minor scale or any other minor scale. So A Aeolian will be the first mode of the A natural minor scale. B Locrian will be the second mode of the A natural minor scale. C Ionian or C major scale is the third mode of the A natural minor scale. Okay, I know it's strange to hear that, but this is how it works. Then D Dorian is the fourth mode of the A natural minor scale. E Phrygian is the fifth mode of A natural minor scale. Okay, F Lydian is the sixth mode, okay, of the A natural minor scale. And finally, G Mixolydian is the seventh mode of the A natural minor scale. So an exercise that I would like to leave you is write down the names and the intervals and the degrees and the notes within the 7 modes of the C natural minor scale, which is made by C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. Write down all of these modes. So C will be obviously C natural minor or Aeolian, the first degree. D will generate the Locrian. E will generate E Ionian or major. F will generate F Dorian, and so on. You write down the 7 modes of the C minor scale. So you look at it as another exercise that you could do to develop all this. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. And again, this is how you should practice the modes on guitar, and also how you should learn the theory, and probably, do a few exercises with the theory and also take some notes about this. Yeah, again, I know that this is a lot of information and in a short amount of time. So if you guys feel like you need to recap or you want to rewatch some parts, I'm going to put the timestamps to help you with that, as I did for all of the previous episodes of this series. And if you feel like asking more questions, feel free to, use the chat while I'm live, even next week. I'm live every week, every Friday. Or leave a comment and I'll get back to you, of course. If you are interested in learning more about all this, I just released last Tuesday a video on modal interchange, where I talk about modes again, and I talk about, in general, how you apply this to music theory, to spice up chord progression. So that could be a good point to go deeper with the harmony of the modes and the modal interchange. Parallel keys, the concept of parallel keys, it's really an important concept to learn the theory the right way on guitar. Okay, you first need to nail the relative concept, and then you need to really dive deep in the parallel concept. But if you guys feel that while you follow these videos, you struggle somehow with the names of the notes on the fretboard, or you're not quick enough to cope with the degrees that I mentioned, or the names of the notes that I mentioned on the fretboard. I talked about this at the beginning of this series, and I finally made a video, which is going to be quite long, actually, to be fair, which recaps the main references that I use and I teach to my students to learn the names of the notes on the fretboard. And this is something that is going to be up on the channel this coming Tuesday. So if you guys are not subscribed to the channel, make sure to do so, to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get the notifications when the next video is up on Tuesday, and when my next live streaming is about to start, about half an hour before the live streaming, you get a notification. So ring the bell, that's really important. And if you want to support this channel, make sure to like this video, share it if you feel like you know somebody that might be interested in all of these topics, okay? And obviously, comment. Feel free to comment, get in touch with me, follow me on Instagram, send me messages, emails. You find everything in the description if you want to be in touch with me, all right? That said, I hope you enjoyed tonight's live streaming on modes and modal scales. We'll continue with, this series next week, next Friday, same time. Appreciate you taking the time to watch this live streaming, the replay, take some notes, and spend some time with me to learn music theory. All right. That's it, guys. Thanks again for watching. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll be seeing you next week. Take care. See you soon.